Hi guys, and welcome to another Divi video. This is Jamie from System22 and webdesignandtechtips.com. Well, in our last video we demonstrated a little scroll effect. If you watch those little grey boxes, when they roll up the page you can have a button fade in. Really easy to do, no coding involved. Today we're going to show you another example of this. We've got a button that's going to roll in from the left hand side. There it is right there. And when it gets up to the top, it's going to stay there. And again, this is really easy to do, no coding involved. And as you can see, when you scroll back down, it's going to disappear off to the left there again. So let's get started. I'm going to enable the Visual Builder so I can build on the front end. Once enabled, let's go down to where we want to work. And I've got a little row here. I'm simply going to delete the row and start from scratch. So I'm going to delete the little row, green tab for a row. Okay, well let's re-add that little row. Little green button to add a new row. I'm going to use a single column. And I'm going to use a little button module. And for anybody that's interested, the reason my button's red is that's the way I've got them set up in my theme customizer as default. But of course you can go into your design and customize it how you want. And I'll show you in just a second for anybody that doesn't know. Put in your title here. Obviously. Roll on down. Where you want to take your clients when they visit this button or click this button, just put your link in here. Always best practice, if you're linking to your own site, leave it in the same window. If you're linking off site to somebody else's, put it in a new tab so yours stays open. Okay, that's pretty much all I want to do that button. Let's go with the design. Now, I've got mine aligned in the middle. Should you want to, you can align it left or right. But as we're using a scroll effect, I really want it to stay in the middle there. I'm not going to affect the text itself. But the button, just if you want to do custom styles for your button, go in there. Flip the little switch to yes. And you can change the text size, text color, button background. And common to most Divi modules, if you hover over any dark writing, if you want to affect it, if there's an arrow there like there is in this case, you can set a desktop state when your mouse is not on it, and a completely different color or state when your mouse is on it with the hover right there. Okay, only other thing I'll do, they've just introduced the new Font Awesome icon set to the Divi theme, so the icon list has grown by a huge amount. So I want an exclamation or something like that, so let's put in a couple of search terms there, that's fine, that'll do for me. I kind of like to see that icon all the time on my button. You can style your icon here. I'm not going to style it. So because I want it to show all the time, I'm going to flip this to no. Only show icon on hover. No, I want to see it all the time. And there it is right there. Great. Well, I'm going to just go down and just throw a bit of box shadow on there to lift it off of the page. Great. Now let's make the magic happen. And again, like I say, there's no coding involved in this today. It's really easy. So if you go over to your advanced tab in the button here, we'll roll on down, we'll go down to scroll effects, and here we are. Okay, I want it to sort of start off over here and roll into the central position when it gets to about 60% up the page here. So to do that, I want to enable the horizontal motion right here. So click on it, flip the little switch to on, and we've now got a little scale. It's going to start off at +4. Actually, +4 would be over to the right-hand side. So I'm going to change that to -4. You can either type it in, increment up or down, however you like. And when it gets to, I think, 60%-ish, I want it to be 0. And I want it to remain at 0, basically right in the middle, all the way. So I'm going to change that to a 0 here also. It's going to trigger from the middle of the element. So when the middle of the element reaches 60% is when things are going to start happening. And there's a sticky position up here. So you can stick it to the top of your page if you want to. I'm not going to do that on the button. I'm actually going to do that on the row itself. But rather than just have it there when they scroll down and see it coming in, I'd like it to sort of fade in when it scrolls across. So we can use the fade like we did in the last video as well as the horizontal scroll, which is the next one. Simply click on that, enable it. And again, I'm going to take this to 60. I want it to be 100% visible at 60%. Anything below that is going to fade in from nothing up to 60%, up to 100% visibility when it gets 60% up the screen, if that makes sense. And I want it to remain at 100% opacity, fully visible all the way up. Okay, well, like I demonstrated earlier, I'd like to sort of have it stick up here when we roll down the site, so if it's visible at all times if they want to click on information. So to do that, I'm going to make it sticky, but I'm not going to do that on the button itself. I'm actually going to do that on the row. You can do it on the button if you want, but for me, row's already got a bit of padding in it, so it'll offset it at the top by the perfect amount for me. So let's save our changes. We'll go up, we'll go into the row, which was the green tab again right here. Going to hit little cog, and again, going to go over to the advanced, or roll on down to scroll effects. And here's sticky position. I want to stick just below the menu up here when it rolls up. So we'll say stick to top. Don't need any offset because, like I say, it's going to stick up there. The row that it's in's got a little bit of padding, which will put it in the right place. But if yours is not in the right place, just go ahead and give it an offset. As you can see, it's sticking up the top there. And for me, that works perfectly. If you want to offset it, you can take it down a bit by doing that way. Or if you want a negative value, take it the other way. Just flip it down or type in a value and you can get it to go up. But mine's good. And common to most settings, if you do something and you don't like it, simply delete it. It will return back to how it was the default. Okay, I don't want any bottom sticky limit. I can stop it sticking either at the bottom of the section or at the bottom of the page or the body area. But I want mine to stick there when they scroll all the way through the site. So if we've done everything correctly now, we should be good to go. So I'm going to save my changes here. I'm going to go ahead and save the page changes. Save draft or publish if you're ready. And exit the Visual Builder. And we'll roll on down. There's our initial buttons. And here's our button fading in as we scroll up. It's going to stay in the middle. And when it gets to the top, it's going to stick there. So there you go, guys. There's a nice little scroll effect for you. And the great things about these scroll effects is they're going to get people's attention. If you're scrolling down a page and that happens, it's going to get your eyeballs on it pretty quick, which is what you want. And that little sticky feature means that it's going to remain in their site at all times. So there you go, guys. There's a little sticky button scroll effect for you. Well, yesterday we did a sort of hover effect where we had an image and a radio button, and when we hovered over it, some text popped up. Somebody was asking about the opposite effect. They wanted to have some text, and when you hover over it, they wanted to have an image pop up. Really easy to do. There's no coding involved in this today. So here we go. And that's really easy to do. So let's get started. I'm going to enable the Visual Builder. Once enabled, let's go down to where we want to work. I'll add a new row. A little green button for a row. I'll put 3 columns in. That's what we've got above. This will work on pretty much any module you want to use today. I'm going to use a blurb purely because it's got a title and a bit of text there. I'm not going to use an image or icon. So obviously put your title in there and your content in here. Image and icon. Well, like I say, I'm not using one today, so I'm going to just trash this. They've just integrated Font Awesome into the Divi theme, so you've got a massive amount of icons to use there. But I'm going to go with just text today, so let's get rid of the image. I'm going to pop that text into the middle, so I'm going to go to Design, Text, and hit the little center align. I want to give it a bit of padding, top and bottom, left and right, just so when the image comes in, it's not sort of going to be overlapping the edges there. So still on the Design tab, I'm going to go to Spacing. I'm going to give it, say, 30 pixels top and bottom. Just put in 30. It'll put the pics in for you. Hit the chain, it'll do the opposite side. And let's go for 20 left and right. Okay. And what we're going to do, common to most horror effects, we're going to have our text in the module here. Then the image that we want to hover and see is going to reside in the column that the actual module is sitting in. So to show you what I mean, I'm going to go into the actual row here and put an image in. So let's save this. We'll go back into the row, green tab for a row, dark tab for a module. We're working on column 1, column 2, column 3 on the right. And for the background, I'm going to put an image in. You've got color, gradient, imaged, or video. And let's pop an image in. Okay, and there you can see it. You've got an image back there. Now you want to make it the kind of shape that you actually want it. And it wants to be tall enough to display your text, obviously, the amount of text that you've got in there. And in a moment, we're going to give it a fixed height so you can put different amounts of text in there and still have images that are the same height. Right, so we're happy with that. Let's go back into our little module. And we'll make it the height that we actually want it. So let's go to Design, Title Text, Body Text. Underneath Body Text, you'll find Sizing. Let's go down to Height and make it the height that you want it for the shape of your picture. And obviously, it's got to be tall enough to contain your text there. So let's try 350. That might be a bit much. Yeah, that's probably more than I need there. Let's go for 250. I think that's going to work. The ones above are actually 230, so I may as well do it in line with those. But for you, just make the image the shape that you want it with your height there. Okay, so we've got our image, we've got our text, but of course we don't want to see that image until we actually hover over the module itself. So still in the module, let's go to our content and let's put a background, because that image, remember, is in the column and the module's on top of it. So if we put a background in, just put a white background the same as our page color here, then it looks like there's nothing there. Now, of course, we want to bring that image back when we hover over it, and we actually want to lose the text. We want the text to disappear and the image to sort of fade in. And thanks to Divi's inbuilt features, we can do that really easy. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the Design tab. I'm going to go down to Filters. And if we go down, we'll find one called Opacity. And that's transparency or see-throughness. Now, initially, when we're looking at it with no mouse on there, I want it to be 100% visible. So no image visible, but our blurb module is fully visible. Common to most Divi modules, if you hover over the dark writing, some icons will appear. Hover over the one you want to affect and go to the little arrow, if there is one. Most of them have one, but some don't. If there's an arrow, we can set a hover state and a desktop state. Desktop, obviously, when your mouse is not on it. Hover, when your mouse is on it. So when we hover over it, we want that whole thing to disappear and reveal the image. So if we pull this all the way down, we've got an image. And when we're not hovering over it, we've got the text. So that should be good to go. Now, the time it takes to go from this to this with Divi, default-wise, is 300 milliseconds, which to me is pretty quick. You can leave it like that if you want to, but if you want to slow it down for a bit of drama, go over to your Advanced tab, go down to Transitions, and there's the 300 mils default. Put in, either type in or use the slider, put in the amount that you want. I'm going to take mine up to about half a second. Don't want any delay, want it to happen as soon as they put their mouse on it. Speed curve, I tend to use ease in and ease out for my hover effects. They're all slightly different. Some will work better in different situations than others, so do check them out. So we should be good to go if we've done everything correctly. Let's save our changes here. We'll save the page changes and exit the visual builder. And we can go on down, and there it is. And of course, because we've given it a fixed height, we can copy it, put different amounts of text in there, and it'll still remain the same sort of aspect ratio. Just to demonstrate that, let's just enable the visual builder quickly. Let's go into the row, and perhaps in column 3, we'll put another image in the background. green tab for the row again, column 3, background, image, pop an image in there. You won't see anything because there's no content in column 3 to put anything there. So when we put the image in there, we can close out of the row. We'll go into the module and I'll just clone it, 2 little squares to clone it. I'll drag this one over to column 3. Let's just go in and change the amount of text and you'll see the height and aspect ratio of the actual image stays the same. So I'll just delete half of it. We'll save our changes, save the page changes and check it out on the front end. Exit the Visual Builder. And there we go. As you can see, when we hover over it, of course, the aspect ratio of the image is going to be exactly the same. So there you go, guys. That's how to create some text to image on Hover. Really easy, no coding involved. We got a bit of fun for you today. We got 3 little button effects, and there's no coding involved in this today at all. First one there, we got a little red button. When we hover over it, it's going to rotate and turn blue. When we take the mouse off, it's going to go back to how it was. Second one, we got this little blue button. When I hover over it, it's going to grow. It's going to have a bit of box shadow. Take your mouse off, it's going to go back to where it was. Third one here, we've got our purple button. When I hover over it, it's going to expand and change shape there. When I take my mouse off, it goes back to how it was. Really easy to do. Like I say, there's no coding involved in this today at all, but they're great little eye-catching hover effects to have on mainly your desktop site. They'll work fine on tablet and mobile, but of course people will have to tap for this to actually happen. But that's entirely up to you. So let's get started. I'm going to enable the Visual Builder. Once enabled, let's go down. I've got a section, the blue tab, with a row with 3 columns. Let's add a new row. And we'll start from scratch. I'm going to put 3 columns in there. And let's add a button module to each of these columns. I'm going to simply add the little button module right here. And before I do anything, let's just align it in the middle. It's great. Okay. Well, I'm going to clone that a couple of times or duplicate it. 2 little squares to duplicate it. There's 1. There's 2. Drag them across wherever it is you want to put them. Doesn't matter which one you drag, they're all identical. Okay, let's just get rid of that top row. Great, well, let's start working on our first button. I'm going to go in there, dark tab for the module. Put whatever you want your button to say there, obviously. I'm going to leave mine just as it is. You're going to want to put a link in for your button. Put the URL wherever you want to take the people when they click on it right there. Always best practice. Leave it in the same window if you're linking to your own site. Open it in a new tab if you're linking off-site. Okay, well, let's get on with the fun part. I will go over to my design. I will go down to button. I'm going to use custom styles for the button. Styling, it's entirely up to you, so I'll keep this fairly simple. Let's make the button text color white, perhaps. And we'll make the button background here red. I don't want any border, so I'm going to take the border down to 0 on this one. And let's give it a different color on hover, perhaps. And this is common to all Divi modules. If you want to create a hover effect, hover over the dark writing within the module. If some little icons pop up and you've got a little arrow, you can create a hover effect. Go to the thing you want to affect, button background in this case. Desktop is when your mouse is not on it. Hover, obviously, when your mouse is on it. Let's change that to blue when the mouse is on it, perhaps. Okay, I'm going to flip it back to desktop. And what we want with this button is when they hover over it, I want it to rotate almost 360 and then come back when they take their mouse off. Did notice I've got a little icon there. I'm going to take that away. If we just roll down a little bit. This is where your icons are, and there's an awful lot of them to choose from. I'm going to simply turn mine to no. So we've got no icon over there. Great. Okay, well, still in the design tab, I'm going to roll down to transform. And we've got several little tabs. We've got scale, translate, rotate, which we're going to use now, transform skew, We'll transform origin, which is the point that something rotates from. So let's go over to rotate. And the first one, I'm going to use this axis today, but you can use any axis you want or combinations if you wish. So again, I'm going to go up to transform. There's the little arrow. We can create a hover effect. When we first look at it, I want it to be exactly how it is. When they hover over it, I want it to rotate almost 360. We can't do 360, but we can do 359. So drag it up to close to where you want. Then there's two little arrows down there. You can increment it up and get it close as you can. So that's how it's going to be when they hover over it. And when they hit the non-hover, it's going to go back again. The time that it takes to go from desktop to hover state by default with Divi is 300 milliseconds. I'm going to slow mine down for a bit of grace. Let's go over to the advanced. If we roll down, we've got transitions. And this is where you'll always find transitions under the advanced. Let's up that from the default 300 to maybe 750, 3/4 of a second. You can type in, you can slide up, and again, you can increment up and down with little arrows there if you want. Great. Well, I'm happy with that. That's our first little button. I'm not going to save and demo it. I'm going to go ahead and do the next two, and then we'll demo them all at the end there. So let's move on to button 2. What do we want this one to do? Well, again, put your title in there. I'm not going to go through the link, the same with all the buttons. We'll go straight over to design. We go into the button, custom styles. Let's perhaps start this one off as being white text, blue background. So we hover over it, turn it to purple perhaps. Again, I don't want any border on there. And also, I don't want any icon on there. But this time, I want this button to grow and have a little bit of box shadow when it gets bigger. So to do that, I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to go down to our transform. This time, I'm going to use the first one called scale. Again, we need to roll over the dark writing, get the little arrow up. And I'll hover. I want it to scale up. Something like that. Let's put it up to 125, so it's a quarter bigger. And when they go back, it's going to go back to being blue and regular size. Great. But I do want to add some box shadow because we're in the button. It's got its own box shadow box just here. Let's pop in, say, this one. You can see a box shadow there. But I don't actually want to see any box shadow at all when we first look at this button. I only want to see it when they hover over it and it grows. So there's no little arrow when we hover over our box shadow, but what we can do is change the color of it. So it appears that there's no shadow. If we roll down, we've got our shadow color here. We hover over that, we haven't got a little arrow. So on desktop state, where I don't want to see it, I'm going to click on the color, just left click on it. There's a variegated slider, which is opacity. If I take that all the way down, it's going to disappear. It's going to be invisible. And for the hover state, I'll do the same thing. I'll click on it and I'll roll it up until it's where we want it. As I'm rolling it up, you can see that shadow coming in. So we've got shadow and large on hover, no shadow and small on regular state. Great. Well, that's button 2. Let's move on to button 3. Let's go in there. And again, I'm going to go straight over to the design tab. Going to go down to the button, custom styles. Again, I'm going to make it white text. Give it a purple background this time. And let's perhaps make it green on hover. Roll down. I don't want any border. And this one, we're going to make it get wider, and we're going to change the corners on hover, the border radius. And again, I don't want a little icon, so let's take the icon off. To change the width on the button, we need to do it with padding. So if we roll down to the spacing, we've got left and right over here, padding, not margin. I think for regular state, We can put it to about 20. It shouldn't change it. Let's get the little arrow up on the padding so we can change the hover state as well. So regular state, let's give it 20 pixels left and right. That shouldn't change it. I think that's pretty much the default there. No change. Great. When they hover over it, let's make it a lot bigger, say 50. Yeah, we can even go a little bit more than that, but that's entirely up to you. And as you can see, it's getting wider. And let's change those so it's got round corners, so it's a pill-shaped button. To do that, if we roll back up to our button in the custom styles, we can go down to border radius right here. Again, get our little arrow up. Hover state, well, I'm happy for it to be square. Hover state, let's give it a high value here, say 50 pixels, and then give it nice round corners there. So it's going to go from square or oblong to being wider and having those rounded corners. And again, let's adjust the timing on this so it slows down for a bit of drama. So over to the advanced again, down to transitions. Let's maybe make this a second long, 1000 milliseconds. Speed curve I'm going to use for this is easy in and ease out. I'm going to change them all to that. Don't think we did the timing on this one. I want to slow this one down as well. So advanced. Transitions. There it is. Let's make this one, say, 600. And again, I want to use easy and ease out. Let's just check we've got that one on our first button here. That's fine, that's fine. Transition delay, if you want it to not happen for a little while, you can give it a delay, then it'll happen after a time scale. I want mine to happen straight away, but I will use ease in, ease out. That's my favorite speed curve for my hover effects. These are all subtly different. Some will work better than others in certain situations, so do check them out. But for my hover effects, that's generally what I use. Great, well, let's save our changes now. We'll save the page changes. Let's exit the Visual Builder. There's our little buttons. Let's have a look at our first one. It should spin ring. Great. They can click on it, take the mouse off, it's going to go back again. Second one should grow and have a bit of box shadow and change color also. And that's taking 600 milliseconds, I believe. And third one there should expand, get wider, and should change shape over a second. And there it is. Like I say, these are great little effects to have on your site. If people are mousing around and things like this happen, it does get their attention, which is what you want on our website. And as I said earlier, these will work on tablet and mobile. Not sure if I'd have them or not. That's entirely up to you. People will actually have to tap, see the hover effect, and then tap again to actually activate the button. So there you go, guys. There's 3 little fun button hover effects for you using the inbuilt features of the Divi theme. I hope you've enjoyed this today and found it useful. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, ring the bell, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget, if you've got any questions, pop them down below. I'll do my best to answer them for you or make a demo video. Once again, this has been Jamie from System22 and webdesignertechtips.com. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.